between 2 and 4. But describing that as being between.
3, I'd say, would be the answer.
In front of the tree there.
No,
Does
that's
it really-
okay. But do me a favor and stand by those little caterpillars. I'm going to have you rearrange those a little bit.
Oh, you use beta tape on this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Use Beta SP. It looks very nice.
I made a mistake of buying a beta recorder.
Oh.
It's actually, what they did is they took...
Okay.
Well,
Really? Okay. So tell me about how you got involved in coal mining in eastern Kentucky.
wait a minute.
Okay.
Rolling.
So how did you get involved in coal mining?
Well, I studied mining engineering at West Virginia University in Morgantown, West Virginia. But then, like a lot of us at that time, into the military. So after several years in the Army Corps of Engineers, getting out of the Army, newly married with a young bride, the job opportunities in East Kentucky were good. And so in the mid-40s, I got a job with Consolidation Coal Company as a surveyor and moved to Jenkins, Kentucky. And that was the beginning of it. And I came with the intention of spending about a year, and I spent 31 years in Jenkins, 31 good years. And worked in a lot of phases of mining, surveying, engineering, production, safety work, and managerial work. So that's 31 years in one place.
In the beginning of the 60s, what was the country like? What did it look like around Jenkins?
Well, Jenkins was fortunate in that it was a well-established town. Work was pretty good. We had pretty much full-time employment within our company, Consolidation Coal Company at first, and then Bethlehem Steel in 1956 bought the property. And we had anywhere from 1,000 to 1,400 employees. I think the way of life there was one of the attractions, one of the inducements to enjoy a mining career in a place like that. Of course, we had the different areas of poverty and programs that were instilled to help alleviate the poverty situation, but pretty much a steady coal mining area with a lot of interesting innovations in mining. The first continuous miners used in mining was started there in Jenkins. Roof bolting, which was a new practice in supporting roof and underground coal mining, was partially initiated there. In haulage, the largest mine cars used in the coal industry in the world in Jenkins, the largest locomotives, and a lot of firsts in that area. It was a very progressive area, and good labor, good work practices, and it was a good example of modern day coal mining.
Now, it had always been underground mining, right? Up until when? How did you first learn about this new technology of surface mining?
Well, surface mining in Kentucky and in the country has been a practice going back many, many years, even when the Panama Canal construction was finished. A lot of that heavy equipment, the shovels, came back to the States and was used in strip mining, if you will. Years ago, small examples of strip mining along the rivers in eastern Kentucky, western Kentucky, coal that had very shallow cover. And but in the 40s, in the late 40s, in Jenkins, we got into a program under Consolidation Coal Company of strip mining. And then in the late 60s, under Bethlehem Steel, we got into it more because as deep mining depleted a lot of reserves, we ran into a lot of what we call outcrop coal that was around the edge of the coal seam, that underground mining was very impractical or unsafe or uneconomical. So therefore, this ribbon of coal, you might say, was left. And then the only way to extract that coal was to extract it from the outside by surface mining, either by stripping or augering or both. Augering being after you strip mine the bench, like taking a carpenter's brazen bit and just boring to the hillside to get the remaining coal by that method. That resumed in the 60s and continued into the 70s. We had hundreds of miles of outcrop coal that you could only get by that method. Most mining by that method in East Kentucky is coal that could not otherwise be mined, especially by the deep mining method. Again, for safety reasons, for reasons of economics. The bottom was very soft and bad. Your equipment couldn't operate. The roof was fractured and you couldn't support the roof, so it was unsafe to touch it. And so you had to leave it. And the only other way you could get it was by the outside mining methods.
What was the initial technology like
In strip mining,
in strip mining?
using bulldozers, shovels, electric shovels, steam shovels in some cases, and removing the overburden, and then coming in with smaller equipment and removing the coal. And back in those days, coal was selling for $2 and $3 a ton. The word environmental concerns was not a phrase that was talked about very much. People mined the coal. The country needed coal, as today over half the electricity in this country comes from coal generation. And through the years, the price of coal kept going up, taxes increased, environmental costs increased, to the turn of $20-some a ton. Today, coal is selling for $20 to $30 a ton, about 10 times what it used to sell for about 40 years ago. And the equipment became more efficient, became larger. It took a lot of capital money to buy this equipment. And under today's method, you can remove more overburden, extract more coal than previously, because you have the money to buy the bigger equipment to extract the coal. And that has been the technical advancement in mine equipment and mining methods. And it's not only in coal mining, but you take in all the other mining methods in this country for what we call non-coal, which is salt and gold and copper and iron and so forth. Most all of it is mined by the surface mining methods. And that is a scenario throughout the world where the mining of metals and other material is necessary if we're going to continue in this lifestyle that we evidently enjoy. Most everything that we use comes from the earth, metals and wood and so forth. And the only way you can extract it is by mining methods, either underground or surface mining. Surface mining has some advantages over deep mining in that it is generally a safer method of mining. Most employees prefer working on the surface than underground. You don't have the concerns in underground mining, especially in coal. You don't have the concerns of ventilation and methane gas to contend with. You don't have the roof control problems that have improved tremendously. There are much fewer fatalities due to roof fall accidents. Underground mining, you have the hazards of equipment that can injure or kill somebody, mashing them against the rib or the roof of the mine. So there are a lot of factors that attract people to the outside. Yet in the wintertime, it's much nicer to work underground, where the temperature is about 58 to 60 degrees year round, very comfortable, and also underground mining. It's exciting, and it's a macho program that a lot of us enjoyed underground mining.
How did you feel about it?
I liked it. I like both underground. I served a lot of time underground, but seeing the realities of life and seeing that a lot of coal could only be extracted by the surface methods, then we adapted and went to that method of mining also. Each had their place, and each provided the coal that, well, in our case, Bethlehem steel, which requires a coking coal, which means a coal that will, as you burn out the gases, it will swell to make coke to make steel. But a lot of the outcrop coal did not have that characteristic, so a lot of it could only be used for generating electricity. So you have to have that consideration on the marketing of your coal. Underground coal has a quality, in some cases, better than the coal around the outcrop.
Where did the capital come from for the initial move towards strip mining?
You mean the money?
The money.
Well, that large corporations get their capital money by either within themselves or from borrowing money from insurance companies, from a lot of major corporations, banks. That's their business, to loan money to buy equipment. So if you have the credentials and the track record and the collateral, you go down to the local bank, they'd be very happy to see you. And if you have the credentials to borrow the money, to buy the equipment, and you have the coal reserves to mine and a market for it, then you're in the mining business. And a lot of people, small operators, have done the same thing. They have got into the mining business by borrowing the money and going from there. So the banks love to see people like that.
What was the impact as surface mining came in on underground mining? You were saying it was different coal, right? But
to some degree, the coal was of a little different quality, yes.
was there an impact on underground mining as the new technology came in?
You mean an
Did it
impact
go
by
down?
surface mining
Right.
against underground mining?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the coal, you're either going to mine by underground methods, or other coals you'll mine only by surface methods, period. Mm-hmm. And surface mining, we had it working in conjunction with our deep mining. I mean, this area we would surface mine, this area we would deep mine. Mm-hmm. And you couldn't surface mine the deep mine coal because of the high overburden, and you couldn't move 100 tons of rock and dirt to get 1 ton of coal. It's impractical. And that's where contour mining became more practical, in that you only had a lesser amount of overburden to move for a ton of coal. And then in later years we became more concerned about reclaiming the land. In the 60s, we got into reclamation. In fact, our people and other mining people helped write the first reclamation laws. And it was done for several reasons. This may be of interest to you, but if everybody had to adhere to the same reclamation laws, then that made us all competitive on an equal basis. If you reclaimed the land and I didn't, then I would have a cost advantage over you. So reclamation laws that are practical puts everybody on the same plane. And then the second reason is the land should be reclaimed to where it's more useful and actually becomes much more valuable. We found out in Appalachia that flat land had a higher value to it. People utilize it, like now you see hospitals and schools and shopping centers, housing and so forth built on reclaimed strip mine land. And I guess the third reason, or a lot of companies, most companies believe in reclamation, is because it's just the right thing to do. And here this past week I attended a Kentucky Coal Association meeting, or at the end of the meeting, awards were given to various companies in each district in Kentucky for their achievements in reclamation work. and making beautiful land out of reclaimed land that either looks better or provides a use that otherwise would not be utilized. And there's been a lot of progress made in reclaiming mine that has been surface mined. And if you fly over East Kentucky, let's say in a helicopter, and look down on the reclaimed land, well, to me, it may be self-hypnosis, but to me, it's a thing of beauty. It's a thing where the land becomes much more useful than otherwise would have been. And a lot of people concern themselves about all of Appalachia will be ravished by strip mining, but there's only a small percentage of it you're going to mine by the surface mining method anyway. No matter what your desires are, it's a matter of economics. And there's just so far you can go in surface mining, and that's it.
What's the economic relationship? Was it more profitable to surface mine? Is it a more profitable method?
No, it's a method of you're either going to mine this body of coal by underground methods or you're not. And if you can mine it and sell it and pay your bills, then it becomes a profitable venture. If you can't mine it and sell it and pay your bills, make a profit, you better not touch it. Surface mining, again, mostly in Appalachia, you're either going to mine it by this method or you're not going to mine it, period. Now, if you can mine it and ship it and reclaim the land and still pay your bills, so to speak, and make a profit in our free enterprise system, then that's fine. But if you can't mine it and sell it at a profit, don't touch it. Leave it alone. Buy government bonds or Series E bonds. You get a better return. Some companies have got into it and have lost their shirt. Just because you have a mining venture doesn't mean that it's a profitable venture. Some have made money, some have lost money.
What advice would you give someone who is entering the mining business?
For either underground or surface or both?
Either. Each, maybe each separately.
If you're going into the mining business, first, know what you're getting into. Have a love or desire to do what you're doing, because it's a lot of hard work, a lot of heartache, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering. So be prepared to withstand that. Be sure you have a market for your coal. Be sure you have enough coal to justify moving in. Be sure that you have enough capital dollars to buy the equipment that you need to get into the business. Be sure you have an availability of good labor, which we fortunately have in East Kentucky. And be a good neighbor. You put it all together, and I think you'll be successful if you have those ingredients.
What was the broad form deed, and how did that work?
That was an instrument whereby several people, including John C.C. Mayo in the early part of the century, ventured up into Appalachia, buying up mineral lands, blocking up large reserves, enough to justify the railroads to come into the area, coming up the big Sandy River, I think it was called the Sandy Valley and Elkhorn at that time, which later became the C&O, or now the Chessie system, built the railroads on up the big Sandy, and then the L&N Railroad built from Irvin, Ravenna into Hazard into Letcher County. The railroads came even before the highways came. Coming from Pikeville to Jenkins, you could come by rail, but I've heard and read that the first highway from Pikeville to Jenkins wasn't until 1927, and yet Jenkins was developed in the early part of the century by Consolidation Coal Company. Consolidation Coal Company spent around $40 million to develop the town of Jenkins and the coal mines thereabouts. And
So
it was rugged, and John C.C. Mayo bought up a lot of mineral land, and by putting it in large blocks, that brought the railroads and that brought mining companies into the area. Of course, I've always thought that Consolidation Coal Company should have spent their $40 million to buy up all they could in Miami Beach instead of buying rugged coal mining properties in East Kentucky.
Now what did it mean when surface mining came in?
What did it mean? What?
The broad form deed.
The deed itself gave the mineral owner the right to extract his coal by any method he so desired. There were a lot of words to that effect. It wasn't practiced too much in the beginning because surface mining wasn't the name of the game in those early days, but it gradually became more and more. And then when surface owners started objecting, of course, surface owners could have been descendants of the original owner that sold the mineral to Consolidation Coal Company or whoever it was. And as more and more surface mining progressed, then more and more objections came from it. A lot of companies did not exercise their full rights under the broad form deed. I know in a lot of cases we had the right to do this or do that, but we would appease the surface owner or pay them so much for disturbance of the surface. I know a lot of cases where it was an agreeable deal. You know, like they say in the mountains, no deal is a good deal unless both sides are satisfied. Well, the original owners who sold their mineral to the purchaser, of course you have to go back another step. Where do they get the mineral? Well, a lot of them got it from land grants, veterans of the Civil War and so forth, and from that they were given 200 acres a year or whatever the arrangements were. And then they later sold the mineral property and in some cases the surface property. I know in a lot of instances the person buying the mineral, in confronting the owner would say, well, I have no place to go. Well, the mineral buyer would say, well, we don't care, you can just stay on the surface as far as we were concerned. But also, in addition to providing the seller a place to live, I think the allowing this person to live on the surface was smart, because if nobody lived on the surface and you had a large mineral tract that was isolated, and John Doe came in and squatted on that surface, in 15 years or whatever the laws were then, he could claim that mineral by squatter's rights. So I think that was a smart thing to do, to allow the surface owner to stay there. And in some cases, again, they have no place to go. So as far as I'm concerned, you can stay there. I'm going for the mineral. That's all I want. So that was the mentality of that day.
And there was no real objection to it for years and years, and then there was objection, right?
Well, there became more and more objection because there were more and more surface mining going on, continuing, and more and more coal available for surface mining, bigger equipment available that could make it a profitable venture. A lot of coal, as I mentioned earlier, was abandoned by deep mining methods and could not be extracted unless it was mined by that method. And then World War II came about, and after World War II, energy became very important. And today, and for the last 5 or 6 years, record production in coal this year there will be over 1 billion tons of coal mined in this country. In the last few years, up around 980 million or 1.03 billion tons, more than ever before. And where does it go? About 80% of it goes to make electricity, the cheapest method of making electricity. Also, when the oil embargo came a few years ago, with oil supply was going to be shut off in this country, what are we going to do for electricity? Then we began to appreciate the need for coal to generate electricity. Hallelujah, we've got a source of energy. We don't depend upon other countries. In China, you see the same thing. In China, you see railroads being fueled by coal, power plants fueled by coal. They're self-reliant. They don't put themselves at the mercy of somebody else. We are, let's say, blessed with an abundance of energy, mainly coal. 55% of it comes from coal. And the need is there, and that's why the production has increased to the point where it is today. And we use more electricity in this country than ever before.
What was your feeling when Night from the Cumberlands came out?
Harry's
Night
book?
Comes from the
Oh,
Cumberlands.
I think Harry was pretty sharp there and stirring things up, and became quite a popular book. And Harry was he's a colorful guy. I liked Harry, but he had his crusades and so forth, and he was very effective, and his book was effective too.
What was your feeling about it? What was the conversation like among?
Oh, Harry and I'd get along. We would kid each other, but Harry and I never got very strained with each other, and he knew me for what I was, and I knew him for what he was, and we accepted each other, and that was it. So, but Harry was a colorful guy.
Mhm.
And did you know him personally?
Somewhat.
No. Very colorful. I like his method of delivery when he would give a talk and so forth. He was very, let's say, he reminded me somewhat of Abe Lincoln to a degree, in that his delivery, he would hypnotize the crowd and so forth. And Harry and I understood each other. We accepted each other for what we were, and he visited with us some, and so Harry was Harry.
What do you think made people protest so much about surface mining?
Because they can't see underground mining. Underground mining, if you could lift the lid off of a mountain and saw what went on underground, you'd probably see some protesting there too. But it's visual. You can see it. Siltation comes from it, as in farming, as in any type of mining. Even erosion just due to nature, like where did the Mississippi River Delta come from? Erosion. So you see this erosion. We have better communications. We have better transportation today. We have people that are more sensitive to issues of all types. You see it every day on the news of protesting, whether it's strip mining or whatever. There's always some cause or crusade that a person can get on. So in surface mining, you can see it. It's there. And let's admit it too, in the beginning, in the very start of this, there was no concern, no knowledge of reclamation. The word wasn't even talked about. Prices of coal was very low. And then more and more laws became stringent. Reclamation became an order of the day. OSM, the Office of Surface Mining, was developed. And today, you mine according to the rules and regulations of the land, both the state and the federal. We've come a long way. There have been a lot of improvements made in mining and mine reclamation, not only in coal, but other types of mining too. So that's the free enterprise system, the way this country is developed and the way things have happened. We don't fuss and fume over highway construction. We don't make too much racket over farming and tilling the soil and causing siltation from that sort. But I guess to answer your question, one time somebody made this remark that everybody loves a coal miner, but they hate coal companies. And I was on the receiving end of a lot of this hatred. And it's true. People resent coal mining companies. I think mainly because they really don't understand the purpose of coal mining and the problems involved in it. And they're not as understanding as they should be. Yet, on the coal operator standpoint, I will say, especially in the beginning, coal companies were not as concerned or sensitive towards the people in the area. That is, I think, drastically changed. The nuts and bolts of it is, as I said earlier, to be a good neighbor. And I know several construction companies did work for us and did work in the area. built railroads, built highways, developed mine sites, and yet they were always in the area where people were living. And this one operator was a very great guy. Wherever he saw there was a need, some lady living by herself needed her driveway dressed up or a drain pipe put in, he would always take care of the people in the area, and they loved him, and he got along fine because he was a good neighbor. And whether you legally have to do that or not, it doesn't take a lot of common sense to say, be a good neighbor and you'll get along. Now, as far as implementing or exercising the broad form deed, you can study it and implement it, but when you do it, you better be a good neighbor. And but as far as where we are today, I think mining has come a long way due to improved technology, a greater concern for your fellow man, better communication, stricter laws, and you put it all together, and there's been a lot of improvements made, a lot of progression made